So you've gone through the scientific literature, you've found some really good peer-reviewed sources. But whilst you've just been looking around for basic information, maybe on the type of animal, maybe on how to start, you found some stuff that you think might be useful, but you're not sure whether it actually fits the bill as a quality example. I'm now going to show you how you can access something that might be useful to you and find the most appropriate and most reliable source for that information, which you have found on something like Google, and you'd like to know if actually you could include it in your essay. So what do you do when you find a good example that you think will be really useful to include in your essay? Well, let's have a look at how you could go and find out more about something that you found on the internet, but you'd like to get a quality reference for. Let's take this picture of the peafowl that I've used in the slides to explain some of the essay content. You can see it's attached to an article, "Male peacocks keep eyes low when checking out competition." That obviously has some relevance to lekking behaviour, where males gather together in groups to impress females. If I click through, I can see that this article is on the website Science News. But unfortunately, this article is only available to Science News subscribers, so the actual content is not there for me. Such websites, for example Science Daily, are really useful synopses of scientific information, but please do go to the original source so you can find what the journalists have interpreted. So what I'm going to do, and a trick that you can use to help you find information in such cases, is I'm going to take the title and I'm going to copy it into Google Scholar. And therefore, Google Scholar gives me a range of papers, of peer-reviewed papers, that contain those similar search terms. So I can already see at the top, there's a paper about peahens. So this is obviously building on that work. Not only are the peacocks themselves, the male birds, behaving differently during lekking, but so peahens have some kind of differentiation in what they're looking for too. So maybe I could go and look at that paper as well. But this paper here seems to be most relevant to that original journalistic piece. Selective attention in peacocks during assessment of rival males. It's come up as something incredibly similar based on how peacocks are assessing each other when they're displaying. This tells me that this PDF is free from the publisher. Again, that really nice thing with Google Scholar, where it will tell you where you can find the full text article. So I'm going to click through to the article itself. And here we can see it's in the Journal of Experimental Biology. So I've got the abstract as well as all of the text if I wanted to read it as an HTML. Here's my article navigation. And then I can just click through to PDF and I can open the PDF of the full text paper, or I could download the PDF file for my own records. And remember, I can use their reference list to help me find more information. It is not plagiarism to use the reference lists of published papers to help you with your literature searching. Simply by reading their reference list, putting their references into a search platform, such as Science Direct or Google Scholar, doesn't mean that's plagiarism. That is public information. So long as you take that reference, you read it yourself, and you interpret it yourself. That's what we all do as scientists. We all look to see where other people have taken their information from, so we can then build on that interpretation and explanation of those references. The other thing that's really helpful about when you find a paper like this is if we go back to Google Scholar, you have to do APA style referencing, American Psychological Association referencing. And in Google Scholar, you can get help with that by using these two quotation marks. Here is the paper listed in the right format for APA. So I can copy that. If you see, when I click on it, it highlights it. He says, no, it's not going to work. Let's try again. There we go. And then I can put that into a Word document. Please remember to call this a reference list, not a bibliography. A bibliography is a list of sources that you have simply looked at. References are those that are quoted within your piece of work. And now I've got my reference. Do make sure that you check that all information is included in that reference. Sometimes Google Scholar will leave out volume, edition, or page numbers. So it's very important that you check that this last part of the source is there, that the right letters in the journal are in capitals, and that all the citation information is included. So I hope that shows you a nice way of taking what was actually something from a Google search all the way through to how we can get a peer-reviewed paper. It's those peer-reviewed papers that will get you the best marks in your essays. It's those peer-reviewed papers that show how you can synthesize, evaluate, and discuss current relevant science that relates to the title of your essay.
I hope you now have a strong grounding in how to search for and find appropriate literature and ensure that you've got valid examples to include in your essay. What I would like to finish on is some pointers on the essay structure itself, what it should look like, and how you should go about writing the essay so you are included points for discussion and evaluation. So this chart, of which there is a clearer version in the LE Classroom, provides you a basic structural outline for what should go into an essay. I've already talked about some of these key areas already. Please remember the title is your topic area and you've been given that from the assignment brief. So your essay's title is simply the question that you have chosen to answer. You then write your short introduction of key terms, key species, key behaviours, anything that you need to introduce to the reader so the main body of the essay will make sense. And then when we get to the main body of the essay, which I have outlined here with these 4 boxes of discuss, evaluate, review and explain, this is where you can use the majority of your minimum of 10 references, feel free to use more, minimum of 3 species examples, where you can compare and contrast what they mean to each other. You can explain and synthesize novelty from the papers that you have read, and you can tell the reader what science has been performed that allows us to understand more about the behaviour you have chosen. How does this scientific research tell us more about social development, social learning, about cooperative carnivorous mammals and their hunting abilities, about social organisation in lekking birds and courtship displays? How does the scientific research enable us to understand more about why the behaviour is performed? And then bring all of that together in your conclusion, where you've got the importance of what you have found, the key summary of your findings and their wider implications, their relevance to the outside world, the application of the research that you have studied. Just to give you a few pointers as to where people have slipped up in the past, the most obvious one, I suppose, is where the instructions haven't been followed. So we have very, very detailed instructions for you in the LE Classroom. As well as this video presentation, please read over the essay guidelines, again in LE, as well as the extra information on the structure and format of the essay, as well as the psychology marking criteria, all of which will help ensure you're answering your essay's question properly. Again, another obvious one, people that don't follow the minimum number of references. We're looking for a minimum of 10 good quality references. You can include more than that, but you must show that you have attempted to search the literature, and we want to see at least 10 sources of information in your essay. And remember my definition of good quality, that's peer-reviewed journals, that's the odd textbook, and that's the odd reputable website. We also have papers that only discuss one species of animal. Again, I've said to you that you should try a minimum of 3 species of animal. Feel free to include more, but please do not overload yourselves. The reason we say not to discuss one is because this is a review article. This essay is teaching you a particular scientific skill in how to review the literature. And literature reviewing will become really important to you in your final year when the introduction of your final year project is a literature review. So we're training you now to review and explain a range of examples within a chosen topic area. With those examples, people also slip up when they don't explain what the paper means. They simply describe its content. So you need to explain and discuss and tell the reader why that science is important. Tell the reader why that research was conducted and what it means for our understanding of animal behaviour. Don't simply regurgitate in your own words the content of the journal article. And finally, if you fall into the trap of writing about the animal rather than writing about the science, you're unfortunately going to lose marks. This is not an essay about the animal itself. This is an essay on the animal's behaviour and on the science that has been performed on that animal. So review, evaluate, discuss, describe the scientific impacts of the behavioural research. We don't need to hear about the natural history characteristics of the animal itself. So here's my example of what to avoid. I haven't taken this directly from a previous essay. I have written this myself based on feedback I have given students in the past. So this is a mock-up, if you like, of what not to do. This is a very descriptive piece. It tells me a lot about what the peacock is. It tells me a lot about where it's from, what it eats, its habitat preferences, why it might have different names for the boys and girls. What it does not do is research evaluation. There is no description, discussion, review, evaluation, or explanation of research papers in this article. All it does is tell me about the peacock itself. And consequently, it's let down by this lack of referencing because there isn't the research evaluation included in it. Yes, the National Geographic website is a good one, and yes, you could include it if you also included peer-reviewed papers, but we shouldn't be using information from Wikipedia. Wikipedia is a great site to go to find some background details, but please go to the reference list at the bottom of the Wikipedia page and find those original references, and again many of these are peer-reviewed sources, and use that primary information. You must be consistent with your use of citations. Use citations whenever you take information from outside reading, because you're telling the reader where you found that from. And that's the only way the reader can judge the quality of your literature reviewing and the quality of the material that you're choosing. So this extract is natural history. It's not behavioural ecology. It's not a review of the behavioural research on peafowl. It simply tells me what peacocks are, where they're found, and what they do. So please avoid this. Please don't feel you should include the natural history information of the animal. We want you to tell us about the science that's being conducted on the animal, rather than the animal's ecology, behaviour, biology, natural history itself. Here is my example of good practice. Again, I've made this up myself. Again, this is not lifted from anyone's essay. This provides a very basic bit of biology on the peafowl. It states the animal's Latin name, scientific name. Remember, that's important. Always include the scientific name the first time you introduce a new species into your text. It explains that the peafowl is a number of species of birds that lek, and it provides a reference. I did not find that fact out myself. I learnt about it from the literature. Therefore, I must reference. I've explained why peafowl lek. They gather together in display sites that they defend, and females are attracted to those display sites. And again, I have a reference because I've taken that from the literature. You can see I've interspersed key examples of natural history within my evaluation. So I've told the reader that a male peafowl is referred to as a peacock and female peafowl is referred to as a peahen. So when I talk about peacocks or peahens in the future, I'm referring to a particular individual. I've then gone on to talk about a key piece of research that describes the lekking behaviour of the peacock. Peacocks are incredibly faithful, they have high site fidelity. 94% of peacocks return to the same lekking site. That's really useful for me because I can go on and explain why. So I've suggested my own reasons for this based on my interpretation of that paper. It's not only the peacock's visual features that are important for reproductive success, it's also clearly his location within the display. Within the lekking area, where do the peahens find him? And then I've ended that paragraph by including some brand new research from 2020, which shows that there are a range of factors, not just what he looks like, not just where we find him in the lekking area, that are influencing what females are choosing and how males are displaying. So in this paragraph, I've got basic background information, I've got key seminal pieces of research, older papers, and I've got new research that supports my evaluation. Please try and do this all the way through your essay. Make sure you reference consistently. Make sure you mix older and newer papers to build on the older papers with the current science. Make sure you attempt to provide novel evaluation of the research findings. So what you read, make sure you tell the reader what it means. And be very light on the background detail. Just a spattering of natural history so the reader gets the key facts about the animal that make the explanation of science make sense. To help you further develop your skills at literature reviewing, there is an example of a literature review paper available in the LE classroom. The 2,000 word limit means you need to be concise. And again, we're training you in concise scientific writing. If in the future you become an academic and you publish, those that you publish with will have very tight word limits. We're training you in that skill today. Please have a look at the structure of this literature review, how it builds information from the sources that are evaluated, so you can see the idea of reviewing literature. Again, I mentioned earlier that the marking criteria for psychology are also available in the LE classroom. This is how we mark work to determine the achievements of that essay that we mark. So please go and look at the marking criteria so you're able to see what the markers are looking for when they are determining the grades achieved by the piece of work. And finally, we have an example of frequently asked questions. So before you reach out to email, before you worry about not understanding, please do go and read over all of this information. The frequently asked questions document in the LE classroom will probably provide you with an answer to a question because we've compiled them on frequently asked questions that we've had in the past. However, if you are stuck or if you are confused, please don't sit and worry at home. Please do drop us a line. Please speak to any of the module conveners that are involved in this unit because they are all familiar with the assignment and they should all be able to guide you in the right direction as to where to find the answer to your questions. Thank you.